The teeth that bind us. It was just Ma, Pa, and I in our cottage. Sometimes I was allowed to have friends over to play. Then it was us three, plus my two friends from school. I usually only ever saw Bonnie and Billy at the schoolhouse, but every now and then they would come over to play. I was the youngest, though my floppy ears were the biggest, flopping all around as I hopped after my friends. We played tag and hide and seek. Sometimes we'd play with my toys. One Saturday afternoon, Bonnie and Billy came over to play, as well as stay at my house for the night. We played with toys for a really long time, but then Bonnie got too bored of that. "Diana, this isn't fun anymore."
"We should play something else," Bonnie whined, lightly kicking the doll away from where she sat. "Like what?" "I'd be okay with anything," I responded, putting on the friendliest smile I could. "Let's go play in the backyard. It's chilly, but there isn't too much snow on the ground today," she said. You could hear the excitement growing in her voice.
"Yeah, maybe we can build a snowman or something," Billy chimed in. She was the quieter of the two sisters. I nodded to my friends and we hopped outside, with me in the front of the other two, leading the way. The air was crisp and cold. There was no wind that morning, so we would be able to play for a long time without risking frostbite. The wind this time of year bit like wolves. Once we were outside, I watched Bonnie push Billy down into the snow, the international call to war in the form of tag. Billy got up and began chasing Bonnie and I around the yard. We played tag for a long time, laughing and screaming while we did. After a while, we started getting a bit tired. I ran from Bonnie until she tripped and fell near a tree. The sound of metal hitting wood resonated through the air. "Are you okay? What was that noise?" I asked as Billy and I ran over to where Bonnie fell down. "I'm okay. I'm not sure what I tripped over, though," Bonnie said as she began brushing the snow from her coat. Billy hopped over to her sister and began brushing some snow from near Bonnie's hind leg. Removing the snow revealed a wooden door. The circular handle on it featured patches of rust. It must have been laying there under the snow for a really long time. There was a chain keeping the hatch against the ground, but it was rusted through and weak. "Hey, I bet we could break this thing open," Bonnie said as she began looking around on the ground and up at the trees. "What are you looking for?" Billy asked. "Just hang on a sec," Bonnie replied, only half paying attention. After a few moments of her silent searching, she returned to the hatch, wielding a large, thin branch. She stuck it into one of the links in the chain and began twisting it. Once we realized what she was doing, Billy and I ran over to help her twist the chain. After a moment or two, we heard the metallic pop of the chain breaking as half of it fell limply against the wooden hatch. All three of us just sat and looked in awe that we were able to break the chain and unlock the door. Bonnie was the one who lifted the door. Below the door was a deep tunnel. "Let's check it out," Bonnie said as she jumped down, not waiting to hear an answer from either of the other two girls. Billy and I looked at each other before jumping down after Bonnie. The tunnel was long. One side stretched so far, it was consumed by darkness. The other way had a few branching paths. The ceiling of the tunnel was supported by wooden beams. It was dark, but not too dark for the young bunnies to see. "You're it!" Bonnie yelled as she lightly punched Billy on the shoulder and took off running into the dark, unlit mines. Billy took off after Bonnie as I ran in the opposite direction. It didn't take long for the light from the door to disappear. I could still hear the laughter from my friends, even though I could not see them. We played tag for a long time. It must have been hours. Laughter filled the mines until nightfall. Eventually, we met back up at the door and climbed the ladder to get back out of the mine. We hopped back to the cottage, where Ma was almost done making dinner. "Hello, girls. It sounded like you were having fun," Ma said, a warm smile on her face. "We were. We played tag in the backyard," I said, sitting at the dinner table with my friends. Oh, that's always fun, Ma said as she placed plates of food before me and my friends. I'll be right back. I need to let Pa know supper is ready, she added before walking into the living room. The three of us scarfed down our food and went into the bedroom to lay down. We giggled back and forth until we one by one fell asleep. A clatter of pots and pans resonated throughout the cottage. I sat up and looked around for my friends. Bonnie was asleep on the floor beneath her blankets, but Billy wasn't next to her. I looked around the room. It was dark, but I could make out my blue dresser and my white nightstand. Oh, and there's my little toy crib and baby doll next to Ma's loom. The floorboards groaned as I climbed out of bed. Bonnie, wake up, I whispered as I tried to shake her awake. I can't find Billy. Bonnie woke up slowly and groggily looked up at me. What are you talking about? She asked. She's gone. I can't find her, I said again. She groaned audibly and joined me in looking for Billy. We couldn't find her around the cottage. We avoided Ma and Pa's bedroom so we wouldn't wake them. We decided to head outside to see if she made her way to the outhouse. We walked through the woods briefly, snow crunching lightly under our feet, until we got to the outhouse. Billy? Are you in there? I asked as I knocked on the door. There was no answer from within. I knocked again and called out a little louder, but once again, received no response. She's not in there. There's not even footprints in the snow. I'm cold. Let's head back, Bonnie chimed in after a few moments. Hey, maybe she was in the kitchen. I'm sure she just got hungry in the middle of the night, she added with a smile as she grabbed me and we made our way back to the cottage. We pushed past the wooden front door and made a quick search once more throughout the small house before moving towards the kitchen. The lantern was left on the dinner table, so we had to cross the room in the darkness before we'd be able to see anything. We took not 4 steps into the room before Bonnie slipped onto the floor. Are you okay? What happened? I said as I turned around to look in her direction, though still blinded by the darkness. I just slipped. I'm all right. The floor is wet though. I think she spilled some of her midnight snack and forgot to clean it up, she said, slowly getting up. The wet sound of her getting to her feet sliced through the silent air like a warm knife. After a few moments of stumbling through the darkness, Bonnie bumped into the table with a harsh thud. She felt blindly through the darkness until her hands found the cold glass sides of the oil lantern that sat on the table. She lit it after a few failed attempts and bathed the kitchen in a dull, warm orange light that came from the dying flame. Hey, I finally got it, she said as she turned around to show me. It took a minute, but she started to say before she was cut off by her own shrill scream, followed by her dropping the lantern, extinguishing the flame within. Walking through the door was a beast unlike anything I'd seen, even in the books Ma would show me. It was a wolf, beautiful and threatening all at once, with soft, magnificent white and gray fur and piercing crimson eyes that seemed to almost glow in the moonlit room. Its teeth were already stained and orangey red. Pots and pans clattered as they were knocked to the floor as the monster leapt at Bonnie, pinning her to the floor under its weight. The young girl could do nothing as she was maimed. I stared, frozen in horror, as I watched what was left of my best friend slither down the gullet of this beast. Ma and Pa ran in with panic in their eyes, Ma scooping me up and Pa firing rounds from his gun towards the beast. I watched as Pa fought as it snarled and jumped at him, the barrel of his gun momentarily filling the room with light. After several long moments and 2 gunshots, the wolf got the better of him, his bloodied face looking at us from within the jaws with glassy, half-lidded eyes as Ma ran into the forest with me in her arms. We made it to the outhouse and hid until sunrise. The smell of aging waste in the tiny space was nothing compared to the coppery scent of the kitchen the night before.
As we left our hiding place, we saw a trail of blood running from the cottage to the hatch in the yard that my friends and I unlocked yesterday. Ma took me to the front of the house and avoided the inside of the cottage. "Let's get cleaned up. Then we can figure out what to do," Ma said. "Okay," was all I could get out. I was still in shock from what I saw. Ma and I climbed into the metal wash bin and she helped me wash the blood from my fur. It clung like a red glue and gave Ma a real fight to wash out. Eventually, she managed to wash the both of us clean and we made our way into the cottage to warm up. We avoided the kitchen like the plague, sitting in front of the fireplace to warm up after the bath outside. "I don't know how she escaped, but I know she'll be back," Ma said after we warmed a bit. "She?" I asked, confused. As far as I knew, a wolf was a wolf.
Ma sighed sadly before she began. "A long time ago, before you were born, we had another little one. She would have been your sister. Her name was Anya, and she was mean to everyone. She was a bully, and she was full of greed. One day, she tried to steal a pup from a wolf while she was out hunting with Pa. This wolf was a spirit in disguise, and punished your sister for being a wolf on the inside by making her a wolf on the outside as well. She may be family, but no part of her is a person anymore. She's only a monster now," she said, steadiness rising in her voice like a phoenix from the sorrow. "I know you're just a child, but I won't lie to you. If she catches you, she will kill you. I think Pa has a few bullets left for his gun. We're going to hide tonight, but I'll keep you safe. Just stay by me," she said. All I could do was nod in response. I was still in shock at the fact I had a sister, and my sister was a monster. Ma found the bullets in the kitchen along with Pa's gun. She brought me food and wouldn't let me go into the kitchen. After hours of her holding me close to her soft chest, the sun fell. "Follow me, little one," Ma said as she took my hand and led me to the kitchen. We climbed beneath the dinner table and hid, Ma making it perfectly clear that we can't use the lantern, no matter how dark it is. After a while, the heavy paws of the wolf could be heard, only because of the blood pooled on the kitchen floor paired with the creaky wooden floorboards. She made a few sniffs into the air, but couldn't find us. We were hidden by the metallic aroma of the room. The kitchen was small compared to the massive wolf, its fur almost brushing across Ma's face. As she stalked by, she flicked her tail from side to side. She was almost out of the room until she flicked her tail past my face, flicking my nose. I sneezed without thinking, and immediately I regretted it. The wolf launched under the table, snapping at the dark. Ma put her arm out in front of me to protect me, but that gave the beast something to grab. Her stained teeth glistened with blood against the moonlight that came in from the window. Her red eyes shone brightly. It felt like they were piercing into my very soul as she locked eyes with me, jaws still clamped tightly around Mother's arm. She almost looked like she began to smile as she squeezed tighter, the bones slowly crunching and breaking in Ma's arm, ripping a scream from deep within her throat. Anya pinned her down with a massive paw and used her teeth to tear flesh from bone, pointing its muzzle to the moon as it let the warm, slick meat slide down its throat. Much like the hyena does to the gazelle, Anya began eating Ma before she was even dead. Her screams tore through the air. I could feel the warm tears streaming down my cheeks as I ran from the cottage and into the woods. The wolf was too preoccupied to follow me. I ran as fast as I possibly could, not stopping, even as my lungs burned for oxygen. After what felt like an eternity, I came to the cobbled brick road that led to the city. I saw a lantern in the distance, the sign of a carriage approaching. I began calling out and waving my arms, hoping to catch their attention. I heard the driver call to the horses to halt, using that as my cue to run to the wagon. As I got to the wagon,
I noticed immediately who it was. The graveyard keeper, a grizzled old man delivering the dead to the morgue to be cremated. I explained to him what happened, and he let me climb beside him on the wagon. "It's still a while before we get to the city. Just sit tight, kid," he said. His voice was hoarse from his years of life. The sound of the old wooden wagon wheels over the cobbles was a little soothing. It felt like hours had gone by before I heard the low growling and thunderous footsteps of the wolf. It's coming! She's coming! We need to go! Now! I said, beginning to panic. Enough people had died to that beast. "It's all right, kid. Not my first time being attacked in the woods," he said with a small smile as he moved his hand down to pat his hip. I couldn't see what he was patting, but I felt a little better nonetheless. Anya burst from a bush and began chasing after us. The horses were spooked by the evil predator and began to run, but she was much faster. She pounced on the back of the wagon and began to crawl towards us. I felt my breath quicken as fear boiled within me. I could feel her hot, smelly breath on my face. Just before she reached me, the driver slammed a small hatchet through the neck of the wolf, lodging the blade into the poorly wrapped corpse beneath. Anya's heavy body fell limp and tumbled off the back of the wagon. The graveyard keeper pulled the wagon to the side of the road and dismounted the wagon, petting the horses to calm them down. "I told you, kid, nothing to worry about," he said as he calmed the horses. We got back on the wagon after the horses were settled. The graveyard keeper raised the reins just before he was ripped from the wagon by his neck. The force of him being pulled rocked the wagon, causing me to tumble off it. The wind was knocked from my lungs when I hit the bricks below. The low growling and snarling blended with his screams, rising to a kind of macabre crescendo. All the fear and sorrow had overwhelmed me in that moment, and all I could think to do was cry. Anya finished devouring what she wanted from the graveyard keeper and began to make her way towards me. But I didn't care. My friends and family were dead. I just sat there and looked to the sky, tears streaming down my face as I screamed. Screaming that Ma and Pa were gone, along with Bonnie and Billy. The scream was blood-curdling, raw, savage, and primal. After a few loud moments, I looked down at the monster before me, just as it slammed its paws into my chest, knocking me to the ground. It sank its teeth into my neck, the blood pouring out like a tipped glass of water. I tried punching and pushing it off me, but my efforts were in vain. My vision faded to black as I quickly grew weak, unable to even lift my limbs anymore to fight. The last thing I saw was the pink, fleshy pipe that was the beast's gullet.